Miss Sandie is smart. After her extensive education and worldwide experience in coatings, she can tell you it's all about processes and people. That the secret sauce to crafting a well run manufacturing business is not just the recipe, but in approach and placement. And this is where Miss Sandie shares her pearls of wisdom by shining the light on the unrecognized and unaddressed that could be lurking in your job shop. Think you need a new employee? Perhaps a rework of the way you organize and work through a job is in order first. Maybe addressing downtimes, housekeeping, part failure, and addressing your own talent is what should come first. Get ready to level up your powder coater game.
Because one thing people don't understand about powder coating is, as opposed to plating and anodizing, there is a lower overhead, a lot lower overhead. So, I've been focusing on getting a lot of work in over there.
Yeah, cool. Okay, well, I'm super stoked. Let's get this going.
All right, sounds good.
So let's see, how am I going to start? Okay, welcome to the Powder Coater Podcast. I'm your host. That's my husband in the background. I'm your host, Kim Scott. And today we have Sandie Kloza. Oh, I'm messing up your last name. Say it.
Kloshevsky.
Kloshevsky. I never would have said it that way. So I'm so glad you helped me with that introduction.
It's not pronounced like it's spelled.
But Sandie's a lot in the Facebook groups and stuff like that. So she's also the general manager of aeroplating.com. Welcome to the show, Sandie. So happy to have you.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. So I find we kind of briefly talked before we started the podcast today, and you have such a dynamic and diverse background because you've been in powder coating for a very long time, and you've done lots of things in the industry. So please share your history in getting into this business and where you started and how you've come where what you've done in the industry and where you are today.
Well, for myself, I grew up in Pennsylvania, northwestern Pennsylvania. My father, my uncle, and another gentleman owned a fabricating shop. And in the early 80s, one of the reps from a powder supplier, I'm not sure who it was then, and a gamma supplier came to them about doing their own finishing because they were sending their finishing down to Pittsburgh or over to Cleveland to have it powder coated and finished. Well, so they hauled it around and they got with their attorney, and the attorney said, hey, if you do this, why don't you start under another DBA so you can get your competitors to bring their work there. So that's what they did. And myself at that time, I was probably 11 or 12. And then my siblings were around close to my age. We're all like 2 years different here or there. And we could actually work in the powder coating shop, the finishing shop, because it's considered a finish, a service. It's not a manufacturer. So by age 11, 12 years old, we were hanging parts. By age 13, I believe I was actually doing the application of powder coating using the Gemma guns, both manual and automated guns. They were a little more prehistoric back then. We also did fluidized dip. We used a lot of thermoclads, powders, because we worked both with thermoplastics and thermal settings. And we did a lot of AT&T parts for the power lines, the anchor inserts for Zern, etc. So I worked there for several years, decided to go to college. At that time, I was really interested in going for education. So I decided to go to Edinburgh State University in Pennsylvania for education. Well, after the few
Be a,
years there, I
to
realized
be a
that,
teacher.
yeah, I was going to be a teacher. And then I realized, yes, the payoffs are really good, but the pay is not as good.
Yeah.
So I started applying. I wanted to go to California. So I actually got into UCLA Long Beach. So before I went out there, I started. Back in those days, we really didn't have email. So I started faxing resumes to companies, and I was contacted by a company called Crest Coding in Anaheim. And they offered me a position as the expediter and project manager, and both expediter project managers. So I accepted that, and I worked there several years. I really babysat a company that was called Laurel, which was an aerospace and that, and we did other products, but there were certain ones that I was the manager of. And in going through the years, I went to several of the finishing um, uh, meetings and stuff like that. And I met a lady that was a Cuban female that started a plating powder coating business in Paramount, California, Inez Trujillo. And this was a lady a female from Cuba. And this was in the 60s, and she started that business on her own. So I really
Wow.
idolized her.
Yeah.
I went to work for her, and I worked for her for several years, and then helped her family, her son and her daughter, Joe and Joanne, set up their company, also Save On Plating, in Phoenix, Arizona. And it's still family owned. I talked to Chris, the son that I knew before he was born. He's running the shop out there. His dad's still the president. I learned a lot from her. And then from there, I just moved on to a few other companies. And then I went to work for a company called Finishing Concepts, which we actually went in to help set up systems. So, in other words, somebody was doing fabricating. I didn't have a finishing shop, or they had one, but they just weren't sure what to do. We went in, helped them, found out what their budget was, became the middleman to get, the chemicals that were to be bought, who to go to, what services to use within that budget. But from there, we would learn from the techs that came in on what to do. So the techs could leave, and we stayed on and trained their team members. I've furthered my education by getting an engineering degree, process engineering degree at Arizona State, because I found that if you want to manage your people properly and you want to keep them busy and happy, manage your processes properly. Make it as simple as possible, as quick as possible. Kind of using the lean manufacturing, which has really worked. So I was there for 14 years, and two of my siblings worked there as well, and two of my children. And they closed down because of the COVID situation, and that the owner's wife passed away. And I was out of work for a while, just doing some contracting work here and there. And Aerostar here in Huntsville, Alabama, Aerostar Industries, they contacted me they found, a couple people referred them to me, and they found me on Indeed, and they offered me a position here. So here I am.
Awesome. Well, and I think along that journey, what really, you kind of touched upon it a little bit, was just writing out those to do, like, this is how you process this part, or this, like when you're starting to get like larger accounts and where you're systemizing a bunch of stuff, you have to make a routine about it. You have to have whoever's doing that part know exactly what step one is, step two. And it seems sort of kind of like obvious sometimes with powder coating, this is what you need to do to get, but sometimes writing that stuff is so very important because people can make mistakes or overlook things, and that's where, coatings can fail, or you can have trouble in the shop, if things aren't written down and stuff. Is that pretty much what you were doing for these larger companies? I know you flew down to Mexico or something, or you did something in South America.
That is correct. Yeah, I was down there with a few companies and we did it because I speak Spanish and English. So we were down there. We wrote, helped a few companies out, helped them get going, but also wrote their processes. But one thing that I've developed is not just written and photograph processes, but actually videoing it because a photograph can be misinterpreted at times.
Yeah.
Like really what direction is that hanging? Those questions. Mm-hmm. So what I found is videoing it and actually putting it on a local server or on a website, and where the team members can pull it up at their workstation. That way they can watch the whole process and, oh yes, that's the way to hang it. They can speed it up a little bit, stop it to make sure the parts are hung right. But furthering that, working with a few companies, excuse me, we were able to go into a few companies where whatever rack they hang their hooks and net on, mark the racks like HA or whatever it may be, and put that on the process as well. So when part number 5306 comes through, they see, okay, we use the hooks from HA to hang these parts. Well, the rack that those hang on actually has like a weld on it that says HA. So it's very simple. That way they can get everything prepared during, before the job runs. It's very quick. It's slow, it cuts down on any waste. And, you got to include your labor as waste when it's downtime. So right. What you're focusing on your line density, your wasted downtime, your changeovers, if you're dealing with changeovers, those things. So you want to minimize those, and that's where the processes help, because people can come in and say, yeah, I know how to do it. Yeah, I know how to do it, but they're not really sure of all the processes, but it's written down. Plus, one thing, even your new team members, that even if they have experience somewhere else, they like that because they don't have to stop and, well, what are we doing? What are we doing? And one thing I always tell people is if you have team members that are standing around, the first thing you want to look at is, have they been trained properly? The second thing is, how is their management? How is their supervisor? Are they directing the job properly? Are they directing the process properly? So all of that combines with your processes and management, overseeing your team members, or as I call it, coaching your team members. It's just part of the process. And I think a lot of people get the misconception about management or bosses. I myself, I really dislike those names. I like coach, because that's what you're doing. You're coaching your team to be better than you, better than anybody. And that's what's making you money. I mean, that's what makes a company money, is your team members. So doing the processes properly, all the way down to your changeovers, your percentage, if you're running reclaim, what your percentage of reclaim your virgin powder is, everything on that. Now, there's variables that will change that, your grounding and stuff like that. But if it's in your process that your hooks run, if you're running an automated line, if your hooks run through the automated system 3 times, they have to be changed. Those things, right. And you put all of those into processes. And, some companies will say, well, we don't, what if, say you got 300 hooks? Well, 50 of them were okay. Well, you're slowing down time to go through to count 50 out of 300 that are, so what you want to do is you take them all down. You space them and take them all down and burn those off. So it's all routine, process routine. So
you're saying like, not only do you need a process for your employees or for who you're hiring, or even if it's just one or two people in your shop, you also need to have your own process as a manager to make sure that they're managing their time, they're doing their process right. So it's like a two-tier thing too. It's not just set it and forget it kind of thing, where you're just hoping and praying they're doing it right, and stuff. But you also, because there can, with batch coders, there can be a lot of downtime while you're waiting for something to cook. You're waiting for that click to start the timer kind of thing. And I think that to kind of segue into that, because most of what you've done is line coding, but you have some really valid, I guess what I'm trying to pull out of the conversation is utilizing the stuff that you've learned on the job into bettering your batch system, and stuff like that and that's where I'm trying to address this educational gap or this informational gap that's happening, where you've got these line coders that have been doing it, processes and stuff, but not a lot gets leaked out or down to batch coders so that they can take that information and modify it to their level. It's almost like a tale. I was researching this right before we got on. It was like, it's like a tale of two cities, right? It's like we've got custom coders over here in this corner, and then we've got line coders over here. And there are some dynamic diversity, I guess, for lack of a better word, in terms of processes. But somewhere in the middle, there's got to be some good stuff in there that we can discover about ourselves and improve each, group of people.
There is.
And so, I don't know if you have anything to say or in response to that. Do you agree or disagree?
I firmly agree. For example, at this location, all we do for powder coat and liquid coating right now is batch. We don't have a line here. We're looking at getting one, but looking over there, it's like, okay, so you have an employee that's doing liquid and an employee that's doing powder, and they both kind of know how to do each other's job. So okay, you have parts that are powder coated. You don't have, as a batch unit, you don't have that many to do. So what you do is you have your batch guy do those, put them in the cure oven, set your alarm, and go over to the liquid line. So you've just cut down on your labor cost because you're using one person. Because I've been in companies, for example, that'll have a liquid and a powder, or let's say two powder booths, and they'll have two painters, but you go in and you'll see a painter put stuff in the oven, and then he's going, or he or she is going and waiting for them to come out of the oven. Well, the other individuals in the other booth painting, and it's like you could be using that same individual, one individual, to do both of them. And that has to do with your processes. So all of us have processes. We have a process of doing dishes. We have a process of taking our showers. So in reality, we all have a process, and the processes do help if you stick to those processes. Now, every so often, there's going to be a deviation that you have to deal with, and you just be prepared for those. A lot of times what I've done, whether it's on a batch line or a conveyor line, the best thing to do is know what you're doing when it comes to bad parts. Actually create some bad parts. So you find out what the results of bad parts are. Actually, I learned that from an individual a few years back. He said, I want bad parts. Create bad parts, log everything that's bad and how they became bad. So from that point on, they were an OEM supplier. So at that point on, that could also be put in your process. So that way, right away, if there was bad parts coming out or something, people knew what to do right away.
Yeah.
So
a few people have come on the show and said that. That's actually, it's funny because you're like the second or third person that is actually, I think we've talked about that in earlier podcasts. I'm not thinking of who it is right now. It might be Paul Foster. We did a show on workflow equals cash flow. And he actually, in his showroom, he had like bad parts, or bad powder coating jobs or whatever. And he used those to show his customer, what you don't want to happen or what can happen. And you're talking about it, using it as a model for your employees to not. That's a really, I like that. Because, we're so scared we don't want to make any mistakes, but really the value is make the mistake so and can identify what the mistake is and then have a process around that.
Exactly. You log everything, photographs. I'll have to send you some photographs of parts that we did. We dealt with the system that had the wrong type of powder boost set up. So we had to run these parts, and we were getting, for example, 2 mil at the top of the part and 14 mil at the bottom. So we had to adjust recipes. This was on an automated booth, but there's a point to this. So going through the processes and creating that, we were able to figure out these are the settings, the recipes that you need to use, whether it's you can use that on a batch, you can use that on a automated system. And this is what we run them at. And this is what creates the bad problems. So as soon as you see those things, you know how to correct them. And it really does work. It works very well.
Yeah. And let's go back, because you actually said a lot of people don't know that term recipe. So now that you've brought it up, let's go over that, because I want to start using that word. I mean, we've always said batch and, like baking cookies or whatever, or baking life or whatever, like bakers do, cake makers or whatever. But let's talk about that.
Okay, well, you're right. A lot of people, especially those that run batch systems, they've never heard of the word recipe. And technically, what a recipe is whatever part you're running, what to set it on. It's predominantly, but not only used for automated systems. So you got one part coming through, let's say part L6. Once that part comes up and you look on the work order or in your computer program, I'm sorry, your EP, I just got a mental block. Anyways, when you look at the work order, you know that L6 is coming through. L6 is run at recipe 3. So you set all your guns at 3. Well, all your recipes at 3. That means your settings on each one of the guns. And for those that aren't really sure of it, on an automated system, you have a whole bunch of units that look like your batch unit, but there's a whole bunch in a box, in a cage. And each one of those have to be set a little bit differently. Well, what you do is you set those and then you lock them in. So right away in your process, the people know, well, L6 is coming through. We use recipe 3 for these parts. Right. And if they set that recipe on 3 on each one, whether it's, 3 on your right may have a little bit higher UA or a lower KV for a reason, but those are planned ahead of time. So it's a recipe that makes your product good, kind of like chili. Seriously, I mean, making a chili, you have your recipe, you have your process, and you know how much to use a teaspoon of this, tablespoon of that.
Right.
Basically, that's what your recipe on the guns are.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think it's funny because these Gamma guns and the Wagners, and they all have these where you can program, obviously, for those that have these sophisticated guns. Not everybody does. The advantages to having that, like, so if you're for Ross, he's big on hot flocking, just as a time saver for him, because he's just out there doing it himself. And so he's figured out his own settings for what he does or his processes. And it's funny because until we started talking about hot flocking and it became such a big topic in the show, or with follow-up questions from a lot of fans and followers and stuff, was, what is his method? Because he's never really thought about it until now, right? And it's really kind of gotten him thinking more deeply, about what exactly he does and how he does it, because he's never really paid attention to that until people were asking him specific questions, and he's like, oh wow, I have to do it and figure out what the answer is to that question. I just do it naturally. But there are, the advantages of, that's just for a custom coder. That's, what a recipe would be, like your hot flocking recipe. What's your KV and what's your, like all of that kind of stuff of what temp are you shooting it hot and everything. So I hope someday to produce the video that we took for the hot flocking. And of course it has the troubleshooting as well, but it's one of those things I've got on the back burner right now, but I do hope to produce a video about that. But, is there a certain mindset that you need to be in when you're, you had to think this through being paid at, as as a outside company coming in to help these people set that up. Is there a certain way that you think these processes through? What's your method or tips on how to really think through your processes for your batch system?
The first thing I look at is their square footage and their WIP area, their workflow. Those are the first things that I'll look at. And if they already have the equipment and it's installed, sometimes for example, a company we worked with bought a $500,000 some dollar booth that it wasn't the correct booth. Well, that's a brand new booth. They can't just say, "Oh well, we aren't going to use it. Let's buy a different one." Right? Exactly. It don't happen that way.
Yeah. Exactly.
Exactly. So from that point, you have to figure out, okay, what can we do to improve the processes and keep the quality good? And a lot of that, again, goes back to processes, but your housekeeping, and then definitely always fall on lean manufacturing. If somebody isn't familiar with lean, the best way to look at it is any wasted time. So what you want to do is keep your flow either as straight as possible or in a horseshoe. So you don't want to be, for example, running product backwards. You don't want to, say you do some finessing or something like that. You don't want to do one farther away that is the first process. So you want to keep it in order. So, those are things you look at, and you look at your square footage for that and what is possible. For example, the booth that I was talking about, well, that can't be moved, but what can we do to make this easier and quicker? And, if you're a new company starting out, whether you got one employee or it's yourself or you have 130 employees, people do get frustrated because sometimes things aren't turning out properly right away. And how I've always kept my team members, whether it's one person or 130 people, you keep them motivated, you get them together and say, look at it this way. We're going to get through this. We're going to resolve it. And the good thing about you knowing this is going back to what I said about producing wrong parts. You're going to know what to do right away. I worked with a team that I explained to them that, it was a disaster. The oven was built. The oven didn't have a man door in the back. There was 3 turns. Parts were falling off. And I told the team members, I explained to the team members, the good thing about this is you've been in here since the beginning. We're documenting all of this. You're going to know what to do once you start running smoothly if that happens again. Because unfortunately, to say this, in manufacturing, in finishing, it's Murphy's Law. There is going to be something that happens. It will be. If anybody thinks differently, they're living in make-believe land. So the best thing to do is be prepared for that. And those team members that were there from the beginning, that were seeing this and dealing with this and getting frustrated, later on, if that happens once or twice, they're going to be like, oh yeah, we know how to handle that, to the newer team members. So, that's the thing, training them properly and keeping things, as we say, and I won't say the full term, but keep it simple. You just want to make sure. And whether it's yourself or whether you got team members, 1 to 130 or whatever, they're the ones that matter. They really do.
They're the ones that normally know, right? When things go wrong, they already kind of know what the problem is. You really need to just listen to them, right?
They do. And that's why, this company is not real large, but I started Gemma walks and that here. So I get with the team members, the leads every morning at 9:00. Then on Thursdays, I like to get with everybody in the shop at 1:00 by the shipping office. And we all just talk about things. And one thing I made clear, this is not a blame game. I don't want names used or anything else. Now we can say departments like, prep department sent over some parts, stuff like that.
Right.
Do not use names. Do not play the blame game. And it seems to work really well. So that helps everybody understand what the other departments are dealing with and coming through. And that happens to sell,
the department. You're not calling him out. You're just calling his department out. It just totally takes the emotion and the aggression out of the frustration out of. Yeah, I that is just really sage advice there. I never thought of it like that, Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead, continue, because that was good.
Well, I will tell you where that led. I will tell you where that led. And I am at work right now, so I will tell you with the gentleman that's here. One thing I was really proud about is we were having that meeting at 1:00, and I noticed someone kind of dented the building. They ran into it a little bit.
Oops.
And almost every place as I lived, nobody would own that. So I was during the meeting, we were all standing there and I said, I see somebody did some new designing on the building. And, because we all get together, the team member actually owned up to it. He said, Miss Sandie, I did it. I'm sorry. Which, I told him it wasn't like, you're in trouble. It was like, thank you. I appreciate that. Your honesty goes a long way.
Yeah.
But what that does is shows your other team members that the integrity, and that means a lot. Having a close relationship, working relationship with your team members is so important. I've never been a crack the whip person. It's like, if I see somebody doing something that is outside the process, I go up to them and it's like, hey, how's it going? And that I've never seen it done that way. That's how I come across. I've never seen it done that way. Instead of, oh my God, you're doing it wrong. I've never seen it done. And maybe that individual say, yeah, we were doing it this way, but it wasn't working. So now and in the larger companies, not in a smaller one, but larger companies, you explain, well, we got to have a deviation written for that. In a
Right.
smaller company, you listen to them and it's like, you know what, that really makes sense. Let's change this process. And your process can be a handwritten process on a shop traveler in the ERP program or whatever it may be. So, a lot of people kind of look at a difference between large companies that run production and smaller companies, but they all pretty much fall under the same category. Now, my son is in quality, and he painted for many years. Very detail oriented. I could never have him on a production line because he's so detail oriented. He slows the production line down. Now, I can take him in a booth and have him coat custom wheels. Excellent job. So what I've started noticing through the years is, okay, let's get him into quality because he is very intricate about stuff. So those are the things. And your supervisor, your owner, your supervisor, your manager, whoever it may be, needs to really watch their team members and pay attention to their team members. I've seen companies that'll be like, oh, this person isn't working out, let's fire them.
Yeah, I hate that.
The way I look at it is, will this individual work in another department or another process? They may be really good at masking. For example, like I was saying about my son, I would never put him on a production line. Never, never, never. But quality works. It's really good. If he was on a production line that I was running and I was a crack the whip, it would have been like, nope, you're not working. Goodbye. Training your team members, which is part of a process, it's very important. And I do hands-on training, and I show them the techniques. And one thing I watch out for when I'm training is the first thing I tell team members that are learning is take notes, remember the questions. Don't ask questions while I'm doing this. And I've had several while I'm coding. They'll start asking questions, and it's like, this isn't going to be good, because a lot of people say, well, anybody can powder coat. That is incorrect. Yes, anybody can powder coat. Anybody can paint, but are they doing it properly? There's a difference. So, training those individuals and things. So
I like how that, and I think if you I listen to the podcast that comes before this one, and the date that we air it, it's going to be the podcast with Powder X. He actually addresses that, but I like your answer just slightly better because it's just a little bit more finessed, and really, but both of you, it's kind of interesting because both of you just brought that up, and as we're talking about this, I guess what I'm on right now these days is this sort of educational or informational gap, or educational, where's this industry going in terms of education and stuff. And it started, you and I connected because you put out a post on Facebook that included about 25 questions to kind of understand, if you're hiring, and I kind of took it a little bit further, like if you were hiring someone, these are the questions, technical questions you should be asking these people if they are coming to you and wanting to be a lead powder coater or any kind of powder coater in your company. And we'll make sure that we post that to our vault. So you'll be able to, click on our link to get the vault. It's on our website. And that'll be provided in this episode, where you get access to like all the freebies that we throw out and all of the great info that these guests like you come on and want to share. So thank you for allowing me to do that. And I think with that one, I actually kind of just changed it just slightly, where I kind of made it like also about yourself. Like if you were just a garage coder or if you were just starting out yourself, these are some questions you should ask yourself there, like, what do you have? Do you know what a Faraday cage effect is? Like, do you hot flock? That can be a yes or no. It doesn't matter. It's just like, what's your stance on that? Do you know all of these things? So we don't have to go through the 25 right now, but there's certainly really, really good questions. And I appreciate you putting that together because they are so critical kind of things. Like if you don't know what this is, then you should maybe go and find out, what it is, because it could be affecting your final finish and stuff. And I guess that's what makes these questions so valid, because it seems like those are the same topics that keep coming up in the Facebook groups. And when someone posts something about an epic fail on a powder coating job, like what happened here, and a lot of them is just already in these finishes or in these questions that we'll have in the vault. But moving on, I think what I want to talk about more is this. I brought this up in the last episode. I'm going to continue to bring it up because it's in the latest Powder Coating Tough magazine. I don't know if you read this article or not, or if you get this magazine. I get it because I think we're members. It's because we're members of the Powder Coating Institute. And it is a really good article from her point of view. I don't necessarily think, and it's hard to address, like, again, the tale of two cities. What's happening in the greater industry or the line coating industry is not necessarily what's happening in the custom coater industry. And to deconstruct the article, it's a good written article. Obviously, she's a doctor, has a degree, doctorate degree, and stuff. And she is addressing the greater problem. I think first off, they were really, really good with getting the data out in terms of that we have an aging industry. Overall, we have an aging industry. And they were saying that, and this is just the manufacturing industry in general, okay? So hear me out when I say this, Sandie, because I would like some feedback on this. And so basically she's saying that the average age for the people in our industry is 44.4 years old, so 45 years old. And 30% that we're going to start experiencing a 30% workforce loss in our industry because people are aging out. Is that what you're seeing? I mean, you've been in the industry and been far and wide in it. Would you agree with that?
To an extent, it is happening, but unfortunately to say this, I have to kind of lean towards it's the fault of companies a lot of times. If they bring people in and they train them properly, a lot of people don't understand that even your schools don't fully recognize powder coat application as a technical job. That's kind of going back to what we were talking about. It is a technical job. And if you put it that way, if I go through Indeed, I look at posts all the time and it's like powder coat painter or powder paint. And it doesn't really give a detail. So if people start realizing if they put powder coat application technician or application tech, It's going to draw attention. That's just like saying, the old gas station attendant, pumping gas, or a gas station attendant. So a lot of it honestly has to do with wording and how you make the team members feel when they get in there. Going back to training, training them properly, showing them steps, not putting them in the dirty booth and saying, hey, coat this part, but staying there with them and giving them some directive in that, making them feel that they're learning something new, like they are. That makes a lot of a difference. Also, pay makes a lot of difference.
Yeah.
For example, California, Southern California is a lot more expensive to live. The pay rates over there are a lot less than they are, for example, here in northern Alabama for the same jobs. So that's because they got more people to fill those positions. And what happens is people don't realize, again, going back to the anybody can powder coat, a lot of times they have somebody come in, they look good. They're powder coating like this. The part looks good. They're not really testing for mill thickness or anything, the owner or whatever. So that person has a job until the customer complains. And then he gets rid of that guy and, I'm looking for a new warm body. So it goes back to, and so I tend to agree with it to a certain extent, but it also has to do with how you train, how you motivate the team members, your new onboards, how you provide it. Now, most of your powder coat applicators, they're not going to stay there forever. Your older ones, you're going to have there longer. You're older, so I will agree with that part. Your older ones, because they're not going to college, or they don't see, well, why should I do this for $13 an hour when I can go to Aldi's, sit down and scan food for $15, $16 an hour? So that's the thing. You have to look at those things. Environment has a lot to do with it. And a big, big thing, housekeeping. Housekeeping has to do with keeping your team members. If they come into an organized, and it don't have to be beautiful and spotless, but organized place, they feel more like it's a position they're going to be at. One of the questions on my questions is, are you looking for a job, or are you looking for a career?
Yeah.
Simple as that.
That's number 2 on your list. Are you looking a job or a career? And that, that can tell you right then and there. I mean, I'm glad it's at the top of the list. In case somebody does, because number 1 is, do you have a resume? And, not everybody is coming to the job like that, but, depending on the position, I suppose, but, I think that's a great, it's like you not just thrown out these questions, you put them in the order of importance, I think, too, as well.
I did.
And that could really set the tone for the interview, right?
It does. And one other thing that I've done many times is, if I have team members and I've trained them in that, and they come to me and they say, hey, Miss Sandie, I'm looking for another job. I will ask them at that time, do you have a resume? These are my team members. I'll ask them, do you have a resume? Well, no, not really. Do you want help doing the resume? Because what will happen is, if you show that team member and you help them make that resume, they're always going to remember you. And there may be a possibility where they look at it and they're like, well, you know what? I really like this company. Maybe it's worth staying here for $2 less an hour because they care about me. I have one team member that is here that he has a job offer at a larger motor corporation. And I told him, just make sure you turn in your resume 2 weeks prior to. If you need a letter of recommendation, I will provide that. If you make sure I get that resignation letter at minimum 2 weeks before you leave, I will make sure, because he's a good team member. I told him I will make sure there's a position here for you because you're leaving on good terms. And, I don't know if I can promise you the same position or the same pay right at that time. That bridge would be crossed. And they always your people remember those things.
Yeah.
So I never, if I can help somebody move on and move up, that's fine, because it shows integrity of your company as well. So it really helps out. Some of my questions are purposely jumbled. Just like, you've seen some people asking, well, what's the answers? What's the answers? I don't need to give the answers. If you're going to be an applicator, one, search those out. Why should I have to tell you? The second thing, I like to split those up and never ask consistent questions, because if they do have them memorized, kind of like taking the mental tests. They'll ask the same question different ways, same way. That way somebody isn't like crib noting it. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, and I think, you, Sandie, you sound like I would work for you, Sandie.
I appreciate
you sound like
that.
a really good boss, And
you mean you would be on my team,
right? And I think you're right about the pay. It's like if a person knows that they're working for the right fit for them, then the pay actually becomes secondary. I don't know if you agree with that, but that's kind of where I was going with your thought on, pay, that it can vary, right? The pay can vary depending on the part of the country that you're in. I look at some of the posts on Indeed, and I was like, oh my gosh, I could never, I'd never want to pay someone that low. But again, our dominant thing here is the cost of living,
Right.
So moving on. So what this article continues to talk about, I have 4 points. And I guess her thing is that they can improve or get younger people to come into the workforce by, obviously having trade schools and universities supporting scholarships and learning opportunities from the manufacturing. And then she says, we also need to sell our industry to a generation that is fundamentally different than the generation that is retiring, I guess because of the aging workforce. And I from a custom coder point of view, I agree with maybe more schooling or more educational opportunities or learning opportunities, for growth. But I think the coding is pretty much selling itself through viral content, and just it becoming more of a broader subject matter for customers to seek out powder coating because they're hearing it everywhere, right? They're hearing it from their friends, they're hearing it from their work, they're hearing about it online, social media, whatever, if they're interested in that, like typically it's automotive. And I know this is a really small cosm that I'm talking about, but people are hearing about powder coating in general because of social media platforms and stuff like that, or because their friends got it done and now they want to get it done too. What do you have any other, in terms of schooling or learning opportunities, what do you think about that?
Well, one thing that I've worked with several companies that overlook a major thing. You can actually turn powder coat application into a technical job. Um, if you do this rightly, companies are able to offer their employees in most states and most counties. Not in other countries. I know Mexico is excluded. Other countries may not. But one thing a lot of companies are overlooking is there is programs in almost every state, in almost every county or parish, there is in the US called OJT. You're on the job training programs. OJT will cover powder coat application. So what that tells you is you can get an employee in that has no experience in that. You write it up, you get the OJT program implemented into your business, you train that individual, you have them working for you. Companies, they're different states and different counties go by different regulations, but anywhere, every county and every state offers 6 months to 2 years, depending on where you're at, 6 months to 2 years, and they will cover 50 to 70% of that employee's pay for that amount of time, 6 months to 2 years, depending on your location. There's not enough people out there, and unfortunately, HR is a great program. You know, your HR people, but a lot of them are on knowledge about. They don't seek out the OJT programs. Me coming out of contracting in that's what I looked for. Is this company gave me a set price that I got to make, and that's what I got to stick with. So finding the team members, plus you can get the people coming out of college, you treat it and you present it as a technical job. And they feel more important because they are learning something. And you can get them in. So say you're paying them $20 an hour, actually out of your payroll, it's only, anywhere from $15 to $10 an hour.
Right.
So which gives you that, plus you can add to your leads. You can up the pay for your leads and those things. But so many, I don't know why people don't look at those things. We have a lot of tax credits and a lot of tax breaks. I work with the Second Chance program as those coming from incarceration into society. Mm-hmm. There are some great benefits. Most of those individuals, they have to have a job. They have to. So they're going to come to work every day. Right. Yes, you're going to have some bad apples, but that's in life. The other thing is you don't have to worry about dropping your analysis because they have to do it. So there's a lot of protection. So presenting those tax credits, I like to use those things because it saves a company money. Whether it's one employee or 300 employees, you use those. People that are on TANF or whatever different states call it, public assistance. There's tax credits for companies, veterans. There's tax credits for companies. So I do encourage people, especially those in a small business. I encourage them, look at those programs. If they're not sure of programs, all they have to do is whatever their state is, type in, for example, here it's Alabama OJT program. If they ever have any questions, they can feel free to find me on Facebook or whatever it may be. And I will help them out as much as possible. It's not like I charge to do those things.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. A bit of advice, Sandie, from you.
My internet's running weird. So.
Oh, I can hear you just fine.
Okay.
It'll probably speed up again. We did participate in something here recently in Hawaii where they had some kind of an incentive. I think it was called Aloha Connects or something like that. And it was through a regional payroll HR company. where they were trying to kind of incentivize the employer, and in order to kind of spur some intermediary work to keep people, working and exploring new opportunities and stuff. So they basically took the first round of CARES money and put it towards this program. I think the state was behind it as well. But, I think you're right. These programs have always been in place, but I have a feeling once we get past this saving our companies kind of CARES money or whatever the government's going to dole out next, I think that's probably what's going to end up happening. We're going to end up, because it's not just happening in manufacturing, it's happening everywhere. A lot of industries are aging out. It's more of a broader demographic that we're talking about here. I think that with her next point, she's talking about they're skewed. She's kind of getting more into more skewing of the demographics in terms of race and degrees and stuff like that. But I think the bottom line is that manufacturing has put a lot of money into chemistry and chemists and chemistry degrees and all kinds of other aspects to powder coating and liquid coatings. But they haven't really focused too much on the operations or processes for these plants. They're sort of dated and stuff. Maybe their equipment's old or whatever. But I think that for me, I see a huge growth in custom coating. And when I look and read all these articles from these magazines and stuff like that, like Coating World and stuff, I try to stay in with the broader understanding of the market. It just intrigues me, but I really do see a huge growth in custom coating. I can kind of feel it in my bones, and just trying to navigate how big it's going to be, or when, it's already happening. But I think a lot of this seems to be coming from custom coating. I don't know, maybe you disagree. You're kind of, you've seen the gamut here, so.
I do not disagree. There is a lot of growth, and I'll tell you why. A lot of the new powders are coming out with are not predominantly just for production lines. They're for the smaller job shops that are doing architectural products, stuff like that. There are certain parts that you don't want to even deal with a production line. You want to do them in a batch, a custom coat line. The other thing that I do want to adding to that is I've seen people get scared because they'll be like, we got ABC company over here that does powder coating, larger corporations. They make these extrusions and they run them and this and that. I have seen some smaller job shops, custom coaters, do a lot better near those because they have to run other colors. And for a line to shut down, to change over, I guarantee this. If you have a small custom coat line that's near a larger manufacturer that does coating, you're going to get their overflow. You're going to get their other colors. You want to focus on them. You want to bug them. Hey, you got anything over there? You want to bug those people and get them. So I look at a lot of that, but yes, and another thing you want to, and a lot of people don't look over, I creep Indeed. I have alerts. I look for companies locally. When I did contracting, I looked for companies, larger, smaller companies that were always looking for people to do powder coating, not just to go in there and train it, but if I knew custom coaters in that area, because if they're always looking for somebody, something isn't going right. They're going to have those parts coded. Indeed can also be used for a great sales mechanism. It really can.
Really? Yeah. I just talked to someone who actually is right in between two large powder coating line operators, larger factory, guys, just like you described. And he is like literally like halfway between both of them in a town, I think in Michigan or somewhere up north. And I was just looking at his website and everything. It needs some help, and I was trying to help him out on what he needed to do. But I'm like, he said he took a little bit of a hit during COVID because those factories kind of slowed down. But and so he was exactly doing that. I mean, I guess sometimes people think, I'm going to go out into the boonies and I'm going to buy a piece of land and put a huge, a huge warehouse and get my powder coating, and people will come to me, and that works sometimes. I mean,
Yep.
It was just described the other day with my Powder X interview where he uses the facility at Borotech where he did exactly that. He went way out of the way and started it. Now people are coming to him, but that is more or less sort of the not norm. But being and doing what you just said, being in between two larger companies to start your company and get that overflow is really great sage advice. If you're thinking about moving somewhere, or expanding or getting out of your garage, because a lot of them are at that point where they're just ready for that commercial space, and to think about that. One of the last points they were making was, I guess, they will. She's saying that she's talking about the recruiting process. In order to fill the pipeline with workers, we will have to update our recruiting process and efforts, or we will fail. We will actively need to recruit employees from current industry underrepresented groups, or we will struggle to fill positions. I think that's already happening. I mean, and that's the, kind of going back to what you said there, is, building your company around a culture that they want to be there at, which is, I think, what's happening. And let's throw up your website, because I really do like your website too. But while I do that, can you speak upon what she's saying? They will need to realize that there may be such a demand for those with trade school training, since so many are going into 4-year universities, that we will need to compete to win the opportunity to be their employer.
Well, I will add this. My father always told us, all of us, he said, get a degree in a good field. He said, but the problem is white collar jobs, they come and they go. What you need to do is you get your degree in a job to get your foot in the door, but also have a trade, because a trade is something that will always be there. And that is shown so much to me and proven so much to me, because going back to what we're talking about, it is a trade, and people are overlooking that. Industrial painting, powder coat application, your anodized line runners, your plate runners, that is a trade. It really is. But through the years, people have neglected to look at that as a trade. Not everybody knows how to do it. What is a trade? Look up the definition of trade. We're not all plumbers, so plumbers are a trade. So these are trades, and you have to sell it that way. And I have got so many of the OJT programs to approve it under a trade. and I'm talking powder coat application and that, to approve it as a trade, because it is trade. Now, the whole catch about that, they cannot know anything about it. Well, they can, know about it, but they've never, had a powder application gun, Gamma or whatever in their hand. So you train them. But it all goes back to motivating your team members, making them feel like it is a professional business, what has to do with, going back to what I said, your housekeeping. If you don't have a lot of money for uniforms, at least get T-shirts, have people uniform. People like that. Your team members like that. They do. They feel part of the team. They feel that, and including them in those things. Another thing is, like I said, I've started the Gimmel Walks. Our company's not real big. Started the Gimmel Walks because what it does is it includes everybody. When people feel like they're part of the team and they're making a difference, they're more likely to stay. And it doesn't matter if they're 16, 24, 34 or 58. You just make them feel that way. Because if they feel like, man, this is a dirty job, I come here, I get dirty, to them, that's a job.
Right.
And people leave jobs. They leave jobs.
Yeah.
People stay with careers. So you want to make it feel, if you want them to say, I'm looking for a career, start from the moment you contact them to set up an interview. Make it professional. I don't care if you're a one-man team looking for a part-timer. Make it seem professional. Set it up to a certain time. Give them options on what time. Look at your options. Have you ever powder coated before? Have you ever liquid coated before? Check into the OJT programs ahead of time. Call them in for an interview. Don't just give them the position on the first time. Even if you want to, bite your tongue, step back, have them come in again. Give people at least 2 interviews. Why? Because it seems more professional. When you interview the person, try to present yourself professionally as well. Even if you don't have a big shop, make sure it's in a little break room that's clean, but also dress appropriately as the person doing the interviewing. You don't want to have holey shirts and stuff like that because they're seeing that. So you want to present your company professionally. And let me tell you something. I have team members that actually do have degrees and they're here. It's my job, the people that are doing the application of the powder coating, that's a technical job. The people doing the masking, they're reading blueprints. That's a technical job. My lab tech, all of those. And you make them feel, and honestly, not just making them feel that way, selling them, swampland in Texas. Well, there are swampland in Texas, swampland in, let's say, Nevada. You want to make sure that what you're selling is true. So that way it's professional to them. And that's the way to do it. Whether it's, like I said, even if you're hiring somebody, that's staying in a shelter, that's coming in and it's a part-time job. Mm-hmm. That's how you want to do it. From there, encourage them to grow. Encourage them to grow, because doing so, they're going to refer other people over.
This is just brilliant advice for any stage company, any stage coder. I think it's awesome. I'm learning new stuff too, and I think that when you're so overwhelmed and busy with business, you just want to get a warm body in there, but you really just need to kind of slow it down a little bit and really think through the job and the culture that you're trying to bring to your company. And I know it seems painstaking on top of everything else you have to consider, but I think it's just awesome that you are we're talking about this. This is actually the first time that we're actually talking about. We've talked about lots of other problems in the industry or in your company and stuff, but this is really kind of getting down to a huge part of your company, especially if you're growing it and stuff. We recently, and I don't think I've mentioned this just yet because it just happened a couple weeks ago, but when you were saying swampland in Texas kind of thing, it got me thinking, let me share my screen for a second here.
Well, I had to think that one through because there actually is swampland in Texas. So that's why I said Nevada.
So this is one of my websites that I started for the powder coater community, where they can list their shop up here for free. It helps people that just need a valuable backlink to their own website and social media and stuff like that. But truly, it's an international directory. We do have Steve in Okinawa. Hi, Steve. And I hope more coders add to their shop. But this started right now. Oh, wait, here, I'm going to get to, we got some new guys in here. I think there's one, powders, trying to find my powder page. Jobs, here we go. So we have a link on here that kind of helps custom coders. So I might as well just announce it here on this website because we are talking about people and work and hiring and stuff like that. And if you are hiring someone, you can add your powder coating jobs openings to the podcast, to this website, powdercoatingnearme.com. For right now, it's easier for you just to email me or at info@mauipowderworks.com or connect with me on Messenger to let me know what your listing is so I can put it up for you. It doesn't take me very long to do it. And this guy here was the, Bradley Heath is growing super, and he's willing to relocate. So I'm going to put it out there for anybody that would like to move to Utah. It's a beautiful state. I was like, when I was talking to him, I'm like, oh, I better not show Ross this because he likes Utah. He might want your job, but they're growing really fast. And this is a great way to, he's looking, I think, for 3 people, and he's willing to pay you to move out there. He's willing to pay you a higher percentage and stuff. So I want to let everybody know that, you can add yourself to this and we can get the word out, help get the word out for you and stuff. And this was user generated. I built this site. I don't know where it's going to go. I want it to go and to help coders any way it can. And when he posted that he was looking for somebody, I reached out to him and I said, hey, let's put this up on the website. And after I did, 3 other companies came out here and came to me and said, I've got some more openings too. So it's a great way to see that the users of the site can actually change and modify what it is that they need with it or for it and stuff. So, I would eventually like to have some kind of a platform for education and training on this website. It could be that. It could do that. So anyways, I didn't know if you knew about this website and stuff, but I just wanted to kind of show you it too, because who knows where it can go from here. I mean, it's mainly a search engine for consumers who find, who are looking for a powder coater with specific needs. So we have lots of different, like if you're just looking for someone that does motorcycle and ATV, there's 68 coders, that do that or have listed themselves with that because I mean, Google doesn't necessarily tell you everything you need to know about what a powder coater does and stuff. So I thought this is great. You know, we can, where there isn't some liquid coating guys and stuff too. We're just creating more and more. There's guys that are adding the ceramic coating in there. There's 10 that do firearms and 5 that have carc and all kinds of stuff. So anyways, just wanted to kind of show you that and the jobs, because it's kind of a new feature that we have on the website now.
Impressive. I had thought about doing that once before, to be honest with you, and I just never followed up on it. So that's impressive, both for the powder coaters and the jobs.
Yeah.
And then, you know, training. But I do got to hand it to the gentleman in Utah, because you do not find many of the custom coaters that will actually help somebody relocate for that type of position. So you know, if he's listening or if he watches this later, I would like to really commend him on that. I really would. It's a very good idea, because what he's going to do is, if he interviews them properly, he's going to get a person that will stay with them. He really will.
That's why when he posted in the Facebook groups, I just had to reach out to him and say, I can help you. Let me help you. How can I help you? You know, and it immediately thought, wow, I have this website. Let's do this. You know, let's make it about that. So who knows? Maybe a consumer will land on the site and, oh, well, there's jobs. You know, like, hey, I'm in the Utah area. I never thought about this, but you know, like, you never know what the community is going to produce or make available to you, right?
I actually know somebody that's down in Arizona that I'm going to have to send him the link.
Yeah, and all I did was just copy his LinkedIn, but his Indeed ad, you know, the text from it, you know, and put it all in there. It took 5 minutes, you know, I mean, I'm happy to do that for everyone and anyone. So, but yeah, who knows where it'll lead to? It could lead to a platform to educate people freely, you know, or, you know, for a small nominal fee or whatever, to host it on that platform, you know, or that website. You know, half the battle is just building the website, you know. Let's take a look at your website. It seems like you have a really nice website, actually. I like the colors and stuff, and it's real clean.
I do want to add, while you do that, because as I was telling you prior to starting the podcast, the powder coat department had been kind of looked over. We do powder coating. There's not a whole lot of a mention on the website for Aerostar, but we do custom powder coating. It is a batch. We have a small conveyor, but it's a batch. You know, the conveyor runs through the batch. Our capacity is 8 by 10. We are able to do, you know, little jobs, large jobs, etc. But I appreciate you bringing the Aerostar website up. We do many different anodizing here. They are batch anodizing. We do batch plating. We do liquid coating, liquid industrial coating, a lot of military, mil-spec, DOD, defense, aerospace. We do screen printing on the parts as well. And there's something that isn't mentioned on there that they did not realize that is it can be a lucrative business. We have our own plotters. So if anybody watching this needs custom masking, high temperature masking, we can do it. We can do it, and our turnaround time can be, you know, within 2 days. If you go through Epsi and those for custom masking, or even custom fab up in Wisconsin, it's very expensive, and their turnaround is no less than 1 week.
Wow. Looks like he's taping there in this photo.
Oh, yeah. He's taping some up. That's our screen printer. That's Cliff. But he is masking some up to do the printing.
These are great photos, by the way. Did you just bring someone in? Are these your own photos? Or, I mean, I don't know. I'm sure that maybe this website was up before you started.
Yeah, it was up before I was there. There are some changes that have to be made. There's a few people that are no longer with the company, and really, if they're no longer here, we really shouldn't keep their picture up, or either that we should crop it, just out of respect. But
I love the overall feel, because whether you're a customer or whether you're looking for a job to work for you, this is culture right here. This is your culture, and it's really forward thinking to let the viewer or the user on the website understand what you're about. I just, whoever did this just did a brilliant job of this for you guys.
Well, the person that did it he goes by Joel the Fish.
That's Anderson the Fish, but yeah.
Yeah, Joel Anderson the Fish, yes. He was out of Ohio, but I believe he's up in Nashville now. But yeah, that's who did the site.
Yeah, very clean.
Yep.
And stuff, because you guys do a lot of different things. And
yes,
did a brilliant, just a brilliant way of showing people all the different things that he's done, and the photography too,
While you're looking at that, I have to add this. I've been a lot of places. I've worked with 1 to a couple hundred different people under me. This is one of the first places that I've been. My team members are here every day. I do not really hear them complaining. I mean, your natural complaints, stuff like that. They're not Nelly belly complainers. They're here every day. I don't deal with we're so and so. They're here. I'm like and that's one of the things that is great about being a coach and not a boss, because we can coach them and we all work together. We really do. And your teams are going to speed up your production. They're going to make your quality good. They're going to back you, and they're going to make your job easier.
Yeah.
So that's the major thing.
It is. It's a great takeaway. So just to recap and close, I mean, it's just that you just said it. I mean, it just kind of put a pretty bow on everything we talked about. And we didn't even get to like some of the other stuff. I don't want to make this forever, but I'd love to have you come back on the show, because we really didn't talk about some of the other things we wanted to talk about. And that, I mean, these questions are a great starter and stuff, but we got the ball rolling on education and job force training and stuff like that. So before we get off today, I found you on Facebook. So everybody go over to Facebook. I'm going to throw up your and follow Sandie. I'll make sure to put the link to your Facebook page in the podcast as well, the podcast and your Aerostar. And just come on back anytime, Sandie, because you have so much knowledge and stuff. I appreciate you coming on the show today.
I would be honored. I really would.
Yeah, awesome. Okay. Well, everybody have a great day. Think about your processes. Think about your culture. Think about your workforce training. Definitely take Sandie up on that idea of the OJT, which is what's it called again? OJT, it means what?
On the job training program.
On the job training. And look at your county, your state, and start Googling that. because you might be able to scale your company using a program like that. And it's a great way to start instead of just putting out the full-on payroll taxes. They may have some, and we need this training to happen in our industry because we are, as well as other industries, are going to be suffering from, wage gap, age gap, but I think the interest is there for powder coating. I really do. I think that as long as we're all participating and knowing what our needs are and coming together as a group, we should be able to work through this issue. And again, if you guys need any job postings on the Powder Coating Near Me website, just please email me at info@maui.powderworks.com. And have a great day, guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Aloha.